It doesn't happen all at once. It begins quietly, like a soft hum in the back of your mind. A single thought, small and ordinary, slips into your head. You don't even notice it at first. It feels harmless, familiar, like something that's always been there. But over time it grows teeth, it sharpens its edges. And before you realize it, your own thoughts have turned against you. Most people imagine their enemies as something external, someone who wronged them, someone who hurt them, someone out there. But the most dangerous enemy doesn't stand in front of you. It lives inside of you. It knows your fears because it grew from them. It knows where to strike because it's the same mind that's supposed to protect you. When your thoughts become your enemy, they don't scream. They whisper. They don't attack you from the outside. They convince you from within. They use your own voice, your own language, your own logic. And that's what makes them so hard to fight. Because how do you separate yourself from a voice that sounds exactly like you? It starts with doubt, a soft, poisonous doubt that doesn't feel foreign. You're not good enough. You'll mess this up. No one really cares. You don't even stop to question it because it's spoken in your own internal tone. It sounds like truth. And the mind is clever. It doesn't need proof. It only needs repetition. And repetition is how thoughts turn into beliefs. One small doubt repeated enough times becomes a wall you can't see but always feel. A soft whisper becomes a truth becomes a cage, and the cage becomes your world. You wake up in the morning and before you've said a word to anyone else, your mind has already begun its quiet attack. It tells you why you shouldn't try, why you shouldn't hope, why you shouldn't trust. It shows you images of things going wrong, of people turning away, of you falling short. These are not prophecies. They're fabrications stitched together from old pain, old fear, old memories that never really left. The cruel thing is, the brain is good at making its lies feel real. It wraps them in emotion. It paints them with sensory detail. When it says you're not safe, your chest tightens, your stomach knots, your breath shortens, and you believe it. Because your body reacts like the threat is real. But the enemy isn't outside. It's in your own head. The mind is a storyteller, and sometimes it becomes a tyrant. It convinces you that you're small, that you're broken, that the world is waiting for you to fail. And when you believe those stories, you don't need anyone else to tear you down. You'll do it yourself. Silently, efficiently, without ever realizing it. The scariest part isn't that your thoughts lie. It's that they lie in a way that feels honest. You can't point at them and say, that's wrong, because they don't sound like someone else. They sound like reason, like instinct, like clarity. And so, you obey. The enemy in your head is patient. It doesn't rush. It waits for moments when you're tired, when your guard is down, when the room is quiet. That's when it grows loud. When there's nothing else to drown it out, it becomes the only voice left. It tells you that no one would understand, that you're the problem, that it's not worth fighting. And because it's inside you, it knows exactly where to press. You try to push the thoughts away, but they don't leave, because they're not visitors. They're residents. They've been here for years. Maybe since childhood, maybe since the first time you felt unseen, unheard, unloved. They built a home inside your mind when you didn't have the strength to push them out. And now they've become the architecture of how you think. Every time something good happens, these thoughts whisper. It won't last. When someone loves you, they say. They'll leave eventually. When you want to try something new, they smirk. Who are you kidding? You think they're keeping you safe, preparing you for disappointment, but really, they're making sure you never rise. The enemy in your head doesn't need to defeat you all at once. It only needs to make you hesitate. One hesitation at a time, until days turn to months and months to years, and the life you wanted slowly fades into a shadow of what could have been. But here's the truth that most people never hear. Those thoughts are not you. They live in your head, but they are not your identity. They are echoes of old pain, echoes of fear, echoes of experiences that taught your mind the wrong lesson. You were not born with those voices. They were planted, slowly, over time, and anything that was planted can be uprooted, but not by fighting it like an enemy. Not by screaming at it, because the more you fight it head-on, the more real it feels. You have to learn to see the thought without believing it, to let the whisper pass through without becoming the voice. This takes awareness, and awareness doesn't arrive like a sudden thunderclap. It arrives quietly, just like the enemy did. It starts with a single moment, a pause, a realization that the voice in your head is just that, a voice, not truth, not prophecy, not law. And in that tiny space, something changes. You start to recognize the patterns. You start to see how your mind attacks when you're most vulnerable. You begin to notice how it uses your own memories against you. And once you see it clearly, it loses its invisibility. And an invisible enemy is always stronger than a visible one. Awareness is the first fracture in the wall, but it's not enough, because the enemy in your head is cunning. It knows how to use your emotions against you. It will tell you that your doubt is weakness, that your fear is proof, that your hesitation is destiny. And that is when you have to decide, who do you believe, the voice or the truth behind it? Most people never make it this far. They live their entire lives listening to a voice that isn't them. They follow its rules, they obey its fears, they build their futures around its warnings. And they never realize the life they're living was scripted not by who they are, but by what they fear. But those who do see it, They begin to reclaim their mind, one thought at a time. They stop identifying with every cruel whisper. They start questioning the things that once felt undeniable. They ask, what if this thought is just a memory in disguise? What if this isn't me? And slowly, the enemy loses its throne. When you stop letting every thought wear the crown of truth, the fortress begins to crack. It doesn't collapse overnight. It's not some cinematic explosion where the enemy vanishes in a cloud of smoke. No, it's quieter than that. It's slower, but it's real. The voice that once commanded your every decision starts to sound different. You begin to hear it not as a ruler, but as an echo, a familiar sound, but not a law you must obey. And that subtle shift changes everything. The mind has a strange loyalty to its pain. It clings to it as if letting go would erase something essential. It says, this is who I am. This fear, this doubt, this endless rehearsal of what could go wrong. It's me. But the truth is, pain is something that happened to you, not something you are. The enemy within wants you to forget that. It wants you to believe it is your identity, because if you believe that, you'll never question it. And yet, the moment you see the enemy for what it is, the war doesn't end, it transforms. It's no longer a battle for control. It becomes a quiet, patient dismantling of lies. You don't have to shout over the voice. You just have to stop kneeling to it. There are nights when the enemy gets louder, of course. When the room is silent, and the world outside is sleeping. It returns to remind you of every insecurity, every failure, every scar it can weaponize. It knows your soft spots better than anyone else. It knows what names to call you in the dark. But now, you've started to learn something dangerous to it. You've learned that just because a thought is loud, doesn't mean it's true. That is how you fight the quiet war. Not with violence, but with clarity. Not with recognition, but with recognition. You let the storm rage, but you refuse to hand it the wheel. You sit with the thought and see it for what it is, a shadow pretending to be your reflection. It takes time, and it takes courage. Because facing your own mind is unlike facing any external enemy. An outside enemy has a face, a shape, a distance. But this enemy wears your skin, speaks in your voice, and walks in your memories. It tells you it's trying to protect you, tells you it's keeping you safe. And that's the trick. It wraps its poison in care. It makes its prison feel like home. Most people never leave that prison because it doesn't look like one. It looks like safety, it looks like control, it looks like preparing for the worst so it won't hurt so much. But in reality, it's just fear dressed up as logic. The mind convinces you to build walls around yourself, but it never tells you those walls are the bars of your own cage. There's a strange moment, a quiet, almost imperceptible one, when you stop believing everything your mind tells you. It feels unsettling at first, like stepping off a familiar path into a dark forest. The enemy hisses louder, trying to pull you back. It tells you that without it, you'll fall apart. But that's just fear trying to survive. The enemy doesn't want to disappear, because if it does, it loses its power. But something else happens in that darkness. You discover another voice, a gentler one, quieter than the enemy, but steady. It's been there all along, buried beneath the noise. It doesn't shout, it doesn't threaten, it doesn't tear you down. It simply waits for the noise to subside. This is the voice of who you are, not what fear made of you. When you start listening to that voice, everything shifts. The enemy doesn't vanish overnight, but it loses its throne. It becomes just one of many voices in your mind, not the one that dictates your fate. It becomes background noise. And in that space, your real self begins to breathe again. The war with your thoughts is not about destruction. It's about reclaiming territory that was always yours. About remembering that your mind is a place you can live in, not a battlefield you must survive. It's about standing in the wreckage of everything the enemy built and saying, this is still mine. And yes, there will be days when the enemy strikes again, when old fears come crawling back through the cracks. That's normal, that's human. But now, you know how it operates. You've learned its language. You can see its traps before you walk into them. And when it whispers, you can't. You no longer bow your head. You let the whisper pass like wind through an open window. Because here's the secret it never wanted you to learn. Your thoughts are not commands. They are not prophecies. They are not the truth. They are weather, and weather doesn't last. You are not your fear. You are not your doubt. You are the one who hears them, and the one who can choose whether to believe them. The real power has always been yours, and when you finally understand that, the enemy inside doesn't vanish in a dramatic explosion. It simply loses its power to control you, and that is what freedom truly feels like. Not silence, but choice.